The desert doesn't forget. That's what they tell you when you're stationed out there, that the sand remembers everything it swallows. I never believed it until March of 1991, 3 weeks after the ceasefire that ended Operation Desert Storm. My name is Staff Sergeant Michael Cordell, and what I'm about to tell you has been classified for over 30 years. But I'm dying now. The doctors give me 6 months, maybe less, and I need someone to know what we found beneath the Kuwaiti desert. What we woke up. The war had officially ended, but our work hadn't. I was part of a specialized reconnaissance unit tasked with sweeping Iraqi installations left behind during their retreat. Most of it was routine: abandoned bunkers, burnt-out vehicles, weapon caches that had been hastily hidden in the sand. We'd go in, catalog everything, check for booby traps, and move on to the next coordinate. It was monotonous work, but necessary. The Iraqis had left behind a maze of underground facilities, some dating back to the Iran-Iraq War in the 80s. Command wanted everything mapped, everything accounted for. Chemical weapons were the big fear. Everyone was paranoid about Saddam's WMD stockpiles. March 19th started like any other day. The sun rose over the desert like a blowtorch, turning the sand into a shimmering ocean of heat. Our unit, callsign Reaper 6, consisted of 5 men: me, Corporal Danny Hayes, Specialist James Morrison, Private First Class Kevin Torres, and Private Marcus Webb. We'd been working together for 8 months, long enough to trust each other with our lives. That morning, we received new coordinates from command: a potential bunker complex approximately 40 kilometers southwest of Kuwait City, in a stretch of desert that had seen heavy fighting during the ground war. What made this one different was that it wasn't on any of the maps we'd captured from Iraqi command posts. Not on their military maps, not on their engineering documents, nothing. Ghost site, Hayes called it as we loaded into our Humvee. He was our communications specialist, a wiry kid from Boston with a nervous habit of clicking his pen. Probably just bad intel. We'll drive out there, find nothing but scorpions and sand, and be back for chow by 1400. Morrison, our medic and the oldest of us at 37, grunted from the driver's seat. When's the last time anything went according to plan in this goddamn sandbox? He had a point. Nothing in Desert Storm had been predictable except the heat. The drive took 90 minutes across terrain that looked like the surface of Mars. Endless dunes interrupted by patches of blackened earth where oil fires had raged weeks before. The sky was still hazy with smoke from the Bergen Field fires, casting everything in a weird orange-brown twilight even though it was barely past noon. Torres rode shotgun, scanning the horizon through binoculars. He was our youngest, 20 years old, from a small town in New Mexico. Kid had eyes like a hawk and reflexes to match. Webb sat in back with me, cleaning his rifle for the 3rd time that morning. Webb didn't talk much, but when bullets started flying, there was nobody you'd rather have watching your 6. We reached the coordinates at 1,342 hours. First, there was nothing. Just more desert, more sand, more heat shimmer playing tricks on your eyes. Morrison killed the engine and we sat there for a moment, listening to the tick of cooling metal and the whisper of wind across the dunes. Command's intel is getting worse, Hayes muttered, checking his radio. There's nothing here. But Torres was already out of the vehicle, binoculars pressed to his face. No, he said slowly. There's something. Northwest about 200 meters. Ground looks wrong. We all piled out and followed his pointing finger. At first I didn't see it. Just more sand, same as everything else. But then my eyes adjusted and I caught what Torres had spotted. A depression in the dunes, maybe 30 meters across, where the sand looked darker, more compact. And at the center of that depression, barely visible beneath a layer of wind-blown grit, was a straight line. Too straight to be natural. Could be a bunker entrance, Morrison said, already moving toward it. Covered by the sandstorms. We approached carefully, weapons ready, spread out in a loose formation. The wind had picked up, sending trails of sand snaking across the ground like living things. It was Torres who found the edge first. A concrete lip protruding about 4 inches above the sand, running in a perfect rectangle about 10 feet on each side. Hatch, he confirmed, brushing away sand with his gloved hand. Big one. Steel, I think. No rust, though. Weird. He was right. The metal underneath the sand was pristine, almost mirror-bright, without a single spot of oxidation despite the harsh desert environment. The hatch had no visible hinges, no handle, no marking of any kind. Just smooth metal set flush into the concrete frame. Anyone else getting a bad feeling about this? Webb finally spoke, his voice quiet but tense. The whole site felt wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. The air seemed heavier here, thicker. And the silence was absolute. No insects, no birds, nothing but the whisper of sand and our own breathing. We call it in, I decided, reaching for my radio. Let command know we found something, wait for. That's when Hayes discovered the panel. It was recessed into the concrete about 2 feet from the hatch's edge, covered by a thin metal plate. Hayes had been circling the perimeter when his boot caught the edge and popped it loose. Underneath was what looked like a touchpad, glowing with a soft blue light. "Sergeant, you need to see this." Hayes's voice had an edge to it that made us all turn. He was crouched by the concrete frame, staring at something I couldn't see from my angle. When I reached him, my stomach dropped. The touchpad was unlike anything we'd seen in any Iraqi installation. No Cyrillic characters, no Arabic script, no numbers. Just a series of geometric symbols arranged in a grid, glowing with that eerie blue light. And they were pulsing, slowly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat. "The hell is that?" Morrison breathed, kneeling beside us. "Power source is still active," Torres observed, pulling out a handheld radiation detector. He swept it over the panel. "No radiation, but there's definitely an energy signature. Strong one." I keyed my radio. "Reaper 6 to command. Over. Static. Reaper 6 to command. Do you copy?" Nothing but white noise. "Radio's dead," Hayes confirmed, checking his own unit. "I've got nothing. No signal at all." "Could be atmospheric interference from the oil fires," Morrison suggested, but he didn't sound convinced. I looked at the 4 faces around me, seeing my own uncertainty reflected back. Standard operating procedure was clear. Unknown installation, unknown technology, no communication. With command meant we secure the site and wait for backup. But backup could take hours, maybe days if command thought this was another dry hole. And something about this place made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Morrison, try to get that radio working. Webb, Torres, perimeter watch. Hayes, with me. Let's see if we can figure out how this thing opens." Hayes hesitated. "Sergeant, maybe we should." "That's an order, Corporal." Looking back now, I wish he'd pushed harder. I wish I'd listened to that voice in my head screaming at me to walk away, get back in the Humvee, and drive until we found a signal. But I was a good soldier then. Good soldiers follow procedure. Good soldiers complete their missions. I crouched next to the panel, examining it more closely. The symbols weren't just geometric, they had depth, dimension, like they were floating slightly above the surface. When I moved my head, they seemed to shift, catching the light in impossible ways. "Try pressing one," Hayes suggested nervously. I reached out slowly, my gloved finger hovering over the topmost symbol. The moment I made contact, the symbol flashed bright and a low hum emanated from beneath the sand. We both jumped back, hands on our weapons. The hum grew louder, deeper, resonating in my chest. Beneath our feet, I felt something massive moving, mechanisms engaging after God knows how many years of silence. Sand began sliding away from the hatch in streams, pouring into gaps that appeared along its edges. "Sergeant," Torres called out. "The ground's vibrating." The hatch split along invisible seams, for triangular sections folding down and away into recesses in the concrete frame. It happened silently, smoothly, without the screech of metal or grind of gears you'd expect from something buried in the desert. Below was darkness, a square shaft descending straight down, maybe 15 feet, ending in what looked like another floor. And light, faint, blue-white, emanating from the bottom. Morrison joined us at the edge, peering down. "There's power down there. Active power. Lights are on." "Could be emergency backup," Torres said. "Some systems can last for years." "Not this long," Morrison countered. We're talking decades, potentially. Nothing stays active that long without maintenance. Unless someone's been maintaining it, Webb said quietly. We all looked at him. He was staring into the shaft with an expression I'd never seen on his face before. Fear, pure and simple. There's no one down there, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. The Iraqis abandoned everything. You've seen it. This is just another. This isn't Iraqi, Hayes interrupted. He was examining the concrete frame more closely. Look at this. No weathering, no degradation. This concrete looks like it was poured yesterday. And these markings. He pointed to faint grooves in the concrete, running in parallel lines. This isn't Arabic or Russian. This isn't any language I've ever seen. My radio crackled suddenly, making us all jump. But instead of Command's voice, there was only that static, except it wasn't random. There was a pattern to it, a rhythm. Almost like, is that Morse code? Morrison asked. Hayes listened intently, then shook his head slowly. No, but it's definitely a pattern. Repeating every 30 seconds or so. The static cut off as abruptly as it had started, leaving us in silence again. But now I could hear something else. A faint sound coming from the shaft below. Mechanical, rhythmic, like ventilation fans or air circulation systems. Place is climate-controlled, Morrison noted. You don't do that for a weapons cache. You do that for something living. Or something that was living, Webb muttered. I made my decision. We're going down. Morrison, you're with me. Hayes, Webb, Torres, stay topside. Maintain watch. If we're not back in 30 minutes, you seal this thing and get back to base however you can. Sergeant, we should all... Torres started. That's an order. We don't all go into an unknown facility. Someone stays with the vehicle and the radio. I could see the relief on their faces, mixed with shame. Nobody wanted to go down into that darkness, but nobody wanted to be the coward either. By making it an order, I took that choice away from them. Morrison and I checked our gear, flashlights, sidearms, a portable radio, first aid kit. Morrison slung his medical bag over his shoulder while I grabbed the video camera we used for documentation. Standard helmet cams for both of us, recording everything. 30 minutes, I reminded the others. If you hear shooting, seal it up and get out. Hayes nodded, his face pale. Be careful, Sergeant. Morrison went first, climbing down a ladder built into the shaft wall. I followed, and with each rung, the temperature dropped noticeably. By the time we reached the bottom, it felt at least 20 degrees cooler. A shocking contrast to the 110-degree heat above. The shaft opened into a corridor that stretched in both directions, disappearing into darkness beyond the reach of our flashlights. But we didn't need the flashlights, not really. Every 20 feet or so, panels were embedded in the ceiling, emitting that same blue-white glow we'd seen from above. Not bright enough to hurt your eyes, but more than sufficient to navigate by. What the hell kind of lighting is this? Morrison whispered, playing his flashlight beam across one of the panels. No bulbs, no wiring that I can see. Just light. The panels appeared to be made of some kind of frosted material, perfectly smooth, without seams or fixtures. When I reached up to touch one, it was cool against my gloved hand and hummed very faintly, a vibration I felt more than heard. We go right, I decided arbitrarily. Stay close, stay alert. Touch nothing unless I clear it. The corridor was wide enough for us to walk side by side, maybe 8 feet across, with walls that looked like poured concrete but smoother, almost polished. Our boots made no sound on the floor. It absorbed the impact somehow, like walking on rubber. Air's fresh, Morrison observed, sniffing. Circulation systems definitely active. And there's something else. He paused, testing the air again. Ozone, like after a lightning strike. He was right. The air had that sharp, electric tang to it, making the inside of my nose tingle. Combined with the cool temperature and the eerie lighting, it felt less like we were underground in the Kuwaiti desert and more like we'd stepped into some kind of high-tech facility. But that was impossible. Iraq's most advanced installations were crude by Western standards, retrofitted bunkers with Soviet-era equipment, nothing like this. and the isolation, the complete absence from any documentation. This place wasn't supposed to exist. We walked for what felt like 5 minutes but was probably less than 2, our sense of time distorted by the unchanging environment. The corridor branched twice, but I kept us moving right, not wanting to get lost in what was potentially a maze. Then we saw the first door. It was on our left, set flush into the wall and made of the same material as the hatch above. Polished metal that seemed to drink in our flashlight beams rather than reflect them. But there was no handle, no visible mechanism to open it. "Another touchpad," Morrison said, pointing to a panel beside the door, similar to the one that had opened the main hatch. "Don't touch it yet." I raised the camera, documenting everything. "We need to map this place first, figure out what we're dealing with." We moved past the door and found 2 more in quick succession, one on each side of the corridor. All identical, all sealed. The corridor continued ahead, the light panels creating a pathway that seemed to stretch on forever. "Sergeant," Morrison's voice was tight. "We've been down here almost 10 minutes. Maybe we should." He stopped mid-sentence. We both heard it at the same time. A sound coming from deeper in the facility. Low and rhythmic like machinery cycling, but with an organic quality that made my skin crawl. It would rise in pitch, hold for a few seconds, then descend again over and over. "Ventilation system?" Morrison suggested, but his hand had moved to his sidearm. "Could be." I didn't believe it any more than he did. The sound was too regular, too deliberate. Almost like breathing. "We check it out," I said, ignoring every instinct telling me to turn around and climb back up that shaft. 5 more minutes. Then we head back, report what we've found. We moved forward more cautiously now, weapons drawn. The sound grew louder as we advanced, joined by another noise. A faint crackling, like electrical discharge. The ozone smell intensified, making my eyes water. The corridor ended at a T-junction. The sound was coming from our right, loud enough now that I could feel it vibrating through the floor. To our left, the passage appeared to lead to a stairwell, steps descending to another level. "Right," I decided, toward the sound. "We need to know what's generating it." We turned right and immediately stopped. The corridor ahead was different. The smooth walls gave way to something that looked almost organic, ribbed surfaces that curved in ways that made my eyes hurt to follow. The light panels had changed too, their blue-white glow shifting to something warmer, almost amber. And the temperature had risen. Not drastically, but enough to notice after the previous coolness. Humidity too. The air felt thick, moist, like walking into a greenhouse. "This isn't right," Morrison said, and I could hear the edge of panic in his voice. "This isn't military, Sergeant. This isn't anything I've ever seen. We need to go back. We need to." The sound stopped. Complete, utter silence. Even the hum of the ventilation system, that constant background noise we'd stopped consciously noticing, went dead. The panels flickered once, twice, then stabilized at a dimmer setting. And then, from somewhere ahead, we heard something new. A clicking sound. Rapid, irregular, like someone typing on a keyboard or, no, not typing. More like tapping. Fingernails on glass. Dozens of them, all at once, creating a cacophony that echoed through the corridor. Morrison grabbed my arm. "We're leaving. Now." For once, I didn't argue. We turned to head back the way we'd come, and found the corridor had changed. The smooth walls we'd walked past minutes before were now covered in the same ribbed, organic-looking material. The light panels had all shifted to that amber glow. Even the floor felt different beneath our boots, slightly yielding, almost springy. "What the hell?" Morrison spun in a circle, his flashlight beam cutting through the amber dimness. "This isn't the same corridor. It can't be." But it was. I could see the 3 doors we'd passed, still in the same positions, though they looked different now. The metal darker, almost tarnished, and the touchpads beside them had changed from blue to a dull red. "Maybe we took a wrong turn," I said, knowing it was impossible. We'd made only right turns. There hadn't been any other options. "We didn't take a wrong turn." Morrison's voice rose. "This place is changing. The walls, the lights, It's like the whole facility is alive. The clicking sound came again, closer this time. Multiple sources coming from both ahead and behind us. In the amber light, I caught movement. Shadows shifting at the edge of our vision, too quick to focus on. "Back to the shaft," I ordered, fighting to keep my voice steady. Double time. We ran. The corridor seemed longer than before, stretching out ahead of us like a funhouse mirror. The doors blurred past, for 5, 6 of them now instead of 3. The light panels flickered as we passed beneath them, creating a strobe effect that made it hard to judge distance. Behind us, the clicking intensified, joined by a new sound. A wet, sliding noise, like something large being dragged across a damp surface. I risked a glance back and immediately wished I hadn't. The corridor was full of darkness. Not shadow, not the absence of light, but darkness as a physical thing. A roiling black mass that consumed the amber glow, flowing along the walls and ceiling like liquid night. And in that darkness I saw shapes. Impossible shapes that my brain refused to fully process, geometric and organic simultaneously, moving with predatory intent. "Don't look back," I shouted. "Just run." The T-junction appeared ahead, and I thanked God for small mercies. We took the left turn, and suddenly we were back in the original corridor, the smooth walls and blue-white lights exactly as we'd first seen them. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in an instant, the humidity vanishing like it had never existed. But the clicking followed us, echoing off the walls with increasing intensity. And beneath it I heard something else. A sound that shouldn't exist, that couldn't exist. Whispering. Dozens of voices, speaking in unison. Words I couldn't quite make out, but that seemed to burrow into my brain nonetheless. Morrison stumbled, going down hard on one knee. I grabbed his arm, hauling him upright, and felt him trembling beneath my grip. "It's in my head," he gasped. "The voices, they're in my head, Sergeant. They're saying, 'Don't listen. Block it out.'" I could hear them too now, clearer than before. Not words in any language I knew, but I understood them anyway. Felt their meaning seeping into my consciousness like poison. They were calling us, inviting us, promising us things, knowledge, power, revelation. All we had to do was stop running, turn around, go back. See, nearly there. I could see the shaft ahead, the square of daylight at its top like a glimpse of heaven. 30 more feet, 20. The lights went out. Complete and total darkness swallowed us. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face, couldn't see Morrison even though I could feel him beside me, still running, his breath ragged in my ear. But I could see them, the shapes in the darkness, no longer just shadows but fully visible, outlined in a sick green phosphorescence. They were all around us, above us, some clinging to the ceiling like enormous spiders, others flowing along the walls with boneless fluidity. None of them were natural. None of them should exist. And they were watching us. I felt their attention like physical weight, pressing down on my skull, trying to crack it open and see what was inside. The whispers became a roar, drowning out everything else, and I realized we were screaming too, both of us, animal sounds of pure terror. My shoulder hit the ladder hard enough to knock the wind out of me. I grabbed the rungs, shoved Morrison ahead of me. "Climb! Climb!" He scrambled up with the desperate strength of absolute panic, and I followed, not daring to look down. Below us, the darkness boiled with movement. Things scraped against the shaft walls, their clicking deafening in the confined space. I felt something brush against my boot, cold and wet and wrong, and climbed faster, my muscles burning. Light appeared above, blessed, burning desert sunlight streaming through the open hatch. Hayes's face appeared, his eyes wide. "Come on, move it." Morrison reached the top and Hayes hauled him out. I was 3 rungs from the surface when I felt it. Something wrapping around my ankle, cold and impossibly strong, pulling me back down. I looked. God help me, I looked. It was pale, almost translucent, with too many joints in the wrong places. What might have been a face was a mass of dark holes and chitinous ridges. But the eyes, it had eyes, hundreds of them, covering what passed for its head, all fixed on me with terrible intelligence. And it spoke. Not with sound, but directly into my mind. Its voice like broken glass scraped across slate. "Stay." I fired blindly, my sidearms report deafening in the shaft's confines. The thing released me with a shriek that wasn't sound so much as pressure, a spike of agony that drove through my ears into my brain. Hands grabbed my uniform, my equipment vest, dragging me up the last few feet. I tumbled onto the sand, gasping, as Webb and Torres threw themselves at the hatch's triangular sections, trying to close them. "It won't shut," Webb roared. "The mechanism's not responding." Morrison was on his knees, vomiting into the sand, his whole body shaking. Hayes crouched beside him, one hand on his shoulder, the other on his radio, trying desperately to raise command. I looked back into the shaft and saw them rising, a mass of pale, writhing forms, climbing over each other in their eagerness to reach the surface. The darkness came with them, spilling up out of the opening like smoke, but thicker, more substantial. Where it touched the sand, the grains turned black and stopped moving, frozen in place. "Forget the hatch," I shouted. "Back to the vehicle. Now." We ran, Morrison supported between Torres and Webb, Hayes still frantically working his radio. Behind us, the first of those things emerged from the shaft, its body unfolding in ways that violated physics, becoming larger as it reached the surface. More followed, a dozen, 2 dozen, their clicking filling the air like a swarm of locusts. The Humvee seemed impossibly far away, wavering in the heat shimmer. My lungs burned. My legs felt like lead, but I kept running, expecting at any moment to feel those cold appendages wrapping around me again. We reached the vehicle and I screamed at Morrison, "Drive! Start the damn!" The engine roared to life before I finished, and Morrison, recovered by some miracle or surge of adrenaline, slammed it into gear. We were moving before the doors were fully closed, the Humvee's tires churning through sand as we accelerated away from that nightmare sight. I risked a look back through the rear window. The things weren't following us. They'd stopped at the edge of the depression, forming a line like soldiers, their pale forms stark against the dark sand. But the darkness itself was spreading, flowing across the ground in all directions from the open hatch, turning the golden desert black in a steadily expanding circle. And in the center of that circle, something else was emerging. It rose slowly from the shaft, too large for the opening but somehow fitting through anyway, its geometry incomprehensible. I couldn't focus on its shape. My eyes kept sliding off it, my brain refusing to process what it was seeing. But I felt its presence like a migraine building behind my eyes, and I knew with absolute certainty that if it fully emerged, if it reached the surface and stood in the sunlight, something terrible would happen. Something world-ending. "Sergeant, the radio?" Hayes thrust his handset at me. "Command's responding." I grabbed it, tearing my eyes away from that thing in the distance. "Reaper 6 to command. Emergency situation. We need." "Reaper 6, this is command. We read you broken and weak. Repeat your traffic." "Sir, we need an immediate air strike on coordinates." I rattled off our previous position, fighting to keep my voice steady. "There's something at that site, something hostile. We need it hit with everything available." Silence on the line. Then, "Reaper 6, confirm you're requesting ordnance on a coalition-secured position?" "Affirmative." "Sir, I don't have time to explain, but if that site isn't neutralized immediately, we're going to have a situation that makes Saddam's entire army look like a goddamn birthday party." More silence. I could imagine the conversation happening on the other end, deciding whether I'd lost my mind, whether to treat this as a legitimate threat or a stress breakdown. "Reaper 6, maintain your current position. We're dispatching a QRF to your location for assessment. ETA 45 minutes. "Sir, we don't have 45 minutes. We might not have 45 seconds. But the radio had gone dead again, the same white noise static filling the channel. Except now I could hear the pattern in it clearly, and it wasn't random. It was a voice, many voices, speaking in unison, saying the same thing over and over. "Come back. See. Understand. Witness. Come back." Hayes heard it too. He grabbed the radio from me and switched it off, his hands shaking so badly he dropped it twice. "That's not interference. That's them. They're in the radio. They're in everything, Morrison said hollowly from the driver's seat. He was still driving, putting distance between us and that sight, but his eyes had a 1,000-yard stare that made me deeply uneasy. I saw them. When I was down there, when the lights went out, I saw what they really are. What that place really is. What are you talking about? Torres demanded. Morrison laughed, a brittle sound with no humor in it. It's not a bunker. It's not a facility. It's a door. And we just opened it. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that what we'd seen could be explained, rationalized. But I couldn't, because deep down, in a place below conscious thought, I knew he was right. The Humvee crested a dune, and suddenly we could see Kuwait City in the distance, the smoke from the oil fires still darkening the sky. Civilization, safety, normalcy. Except when I looked back, I saw that the darkness was still spreading. We drove for 20 minutes at maximum speed, the Humvee's engine screaming in protest, before Morrison finally slowed down. The site had long since disappeared behind the dunes, but none of us could shake the feeling that we were still being pursued. Torres was monitoring the horizon with binoculars, his face pale. I don't see anything following us. No movement, no. He stopped abruptly. What? I demanded. The sky. Behind us. It's darker than it should be, even with the oil fires. And it's getting worse. I grabbed the binoculars and looked. He was right. The haze that had covered the desert for weeks was intensifying in the direction we'd come from. A roiling mass of darkness that seemed to pulse with its own malevolent life. Lightning flickered within it, green and purple and colors I couldn't name, nothing like natural electrical discharge. And it was spreading, slowly but inexorably, like spilled ink across paper. We need to warn someone, Hayes said. Command, the coalition forces. Someone has to know what's happening. They won't believe us. Webb spoke for the first time since we'd escaped the shaft. Would you? If someone came to you with a story about monsters under the desert, they'll think we're suffering from heat stroke or battle fatigue. We have proof, I said, touching my helmet camera. The footage. Whatever was down there, it's on video. Morrison shook his head slowly. You really think they'll let that footage see daylight? The moment command realizes what we found, what we awakened, they'll classify it so far above top secret it'll make Area 51 look like a public library. Then what do you suggest? Torres snapped. We just keep driving? Pretend it never happened. I'm suggesting we're already dead, Morrison said flatly. We just don't know it yet. The radio crackled to life, making us all jump. But this time it was a clear signal, Command's voice cutting through without static. Reaper 6, this is Command. We have visual on smoke or dust cloud at coordinates you provided. Drone footage shows significant atmospheric disturbance. Advise your current status and condition. I grabbed the handset. Command, this is Reaper 6 actual. We are approximately 20 kilometers from the site, en route to Kuwait City. All personnel accounted for and ambulatory, but we encountered hostile contacts at the target location. Repeat, hostile contacts. Nature unknown. Request immediate quarantine of the area and aerial reconnaissance. Copy that, Reaper 6. Can you describe the hostile contacts? How could I describe what we'd seen? How could I put into words something that broke the laws of physics and biology simultaneously? Negative, Command. Not over unsecure channel. We have helmet cam footage. Recommend face-to-face debrief with senior intelligence staff. Another pause. Understood, Reaper 6. Continue to Kuwait City staging area. Medical and debrief team will meet you on arrival. And Sergeant. The voice took on a harder edge. No communication with other units about this. Complete information blackout until debrief. Acknowledge. Acknowledged, Command. Information blackout in effect. The radio clicked off and we sat in silence, watching the road ahead shimmer in the heat. But my mind was back in that corridor, seeing those impossible shapes, hearing that voice in my head. Stay. Anyone else's ears hurting? Torres asked suddenly. Now that he mentioned it, yes. A deep pressure like descending in an airplane, but worse, and getting steadily more intense. Altitude change? Hayes suggested, but we were in the desert, elevation barely above sea level. Morrison checked his watch, frowned, and checked it again. That's not possible. What? My watch. It says we've been driving for 6 hours. But the sun. He pointed at the sky where the sun hung in exactly the same position it had been when we'd left the site. It hasn't moved. At all. I looked at my own watch and felt my stomach drop. He was right. The digital display read 1947 hours. 7:47 p.m. But the sun was still high in the sky, the light unchanged from mid-afternoon. Watches must have been damaged, Torres said uncertainly. Some kind of EMP from that place screwed up the electronics. Mine's analog, Webb said quietly, showing his old mechanical watch. It read the same as ours. And as we watched, the second hand ticked backward. Once, twice, then started running backward continuously. We need to stop the vehicle, I said. Right now. Full stop. Morrison didn't argue, bringing the Humvee to a halt. We sat there, engine idling, and the pressure in my ears intensified to the point of pain. Outside, the desert had gone still. No wind, no movement, the sand frozen in mid-ripple like a photograph. Then Torres pointed ahead and said, very calmly, "There's someone on the road." A figure stood approximately 100 meters ahead, directly in our path. Human-shaped, human-sized, but even at this distance, something about it was fundamentally wrong. It stood too still, too straight, like a mannequin placed in the middle of the desert. Could be a survivor, Hayes said without conviction. Someone from a downed Iraqi unit? In a desert this empty? Webb shook his head. After 3 weeks? No water? No shelter? No one could survive that. The figure didn't move, didn't wave for help, just stood there, watching us with a stillness that was more disturbing than any movement could have been. We go around, I decided. Morrison put the Humvee in gear and turned off the road, giving the figure a wide berth. But as we moved, it turned to follow our progress. Slowly, mechanically, its head rotating farther than human anatomy should allow. And then it smiled. From 100 meters away, I shouldn't have been able to see details of the figure's face. But I saw that smile with perfect, horrible clarity. Too wide, stretching from ear to ear, filled with too many teeth that were all the wrong shape. Don't stop, I told Morrison. Don't slow down. Just keep driving. But as we passed, more figures appeared. They emerged from behind dunes, rose up from the sand itself, materialized from the shimmer of heat haze. Dozens of them, all human-shaped, all standing in that same unnaturally rigid posture. All smiling. What the fuck are those? Torres whispered. I didn't answer because I didn't know. They looked human from a distance, desert camouflage uniforms, equipment vests, helmets. But the way they moved, the way they stood, the way they watched us pass with those two wide smiles. One of them was wearing Kuwaiti military insignia. Another had the patch of an Iraqi Republican Guard unit. A third wore U.S. Marine Corps colors. They're wearing our uniforms, Hayes said, his voice rising. They're wearing coalition and Iraqi uniforms. How are they? They're not real, Morrison interrupted. Look at the sand around them. No footprints. No disturbed ground. They're not physically there. Then what are they? Webb demanded. Projections. Echoes. Memories. Morrison's voice had taken on a strange, distant quality. The place we opened, it's reading us. Reading our minds, our fears, our experiences. It's learning what we know and using it to. One of the figures stepped into our path. Morrison swerved instinctively, the Humvee's wheels churning through loose sand. We fishtailed, recovered, and suddenly we were surrounded. The figures had closed in while we were distracted, forming a loose circle around us, maybe 30 of them now, all smiling, all watching. Ram through them, I ordered. Sergeant, if they're real, they're not real. You said it yourself. Drive. Morrison accelerated toward the nearest gap between figures. At the last second, they moved aside, parting like a curtain, letting us through. But as we passed, I heard laughter. Not from any single source, but from all around, echoing across the empty desert. Children's laughter, high and merry and completely wrong in this context. Then the children appeared. They stood on the dunes, maybe 20 or 30 of them, ranging in age from maybe 5 to 15. Middle Eastern features, civilian clothes, some holding toys, a doll, a ball, a wooden truck. They weren't smiling. They were crying. Silent tears streaming down their faces as they watched us drive past. "Oh God," Hayes breathed. "Are those?" "Don't." I cut him off. "Don't think about it. Don't engage with it." But I knew what he was thinking because I was thinking it too. The war had claimed civilian casualties. Casualties that command didn't like to discuss, that got buried in classified reports and redacted documents. Children caught in crossfire, in bombing runs, in the chaos of urban combat. The children on the dunes raised their hands, waving. Not friendly waves, but slow, mechanical gestures, like puppets on strings. And their mouths opened in unison, forming words I couldn't hear but understood anyway. "You did this. That's not fair," Torres said, and I was disturbed to hear him responding to the hallucination as if it were real. "We didn't. The war wasn't. We were following orders." "Torres, shut up," I snapped. "Don't talk to them. They're not real. They're trying to get in your head." But it was already too late. The pressure in my skull had become unbearable, and I could feel something probing at my thoughts, rifling through my memories like pages in a book. The thing from the facility, or things plural, were in my mind, seeing everything I'd ever done, every choice I'd made, every secret I'd kept. And they were judging. The desert around us began to change. The sand darkened, turning from gold to ash gray. The sky took on a greenish tint, like the light before a tornado. The sun, which had been frozen in place, suddenly began to move. Not setting, but rising and setting rapidly, strobing between day and night at an impossible rate. "Morrison, how fast are we going?" I asked. He glanced at the speedometer and his face went white. 60. "But it feels like we're barely moving. Like the ground is—" "Oh Christ, look at the sand." We were moving, but the desert was moving too, flowing beneath our tires like water, patterns forming and dissolving in the dunes. Shapes that might have been faces or hands, or things with no earthly name. And in those patterns, I saw images, memories that weren't mine but that I understood perfectly. I saw the facility as it had been centuries or maybe millennia ago. Not buried but standing above ground, a complex of buildings that hurt to look at because they existed in too many dimensions simultaneously. I saw the things that had built it, beings that were to humans what humans were to insects, going about their incomprehensible business. And I saw what had happened to them. They had opened something. A door, just as Morrison had said, but not a door to another place. A door to another state of being, another layer of reality that existed parallel to ours but separate, like radio frequencies on different channels. And they had invited something through, something that had devoured them, absorbed them, become them, and now it had awakened again, and it was hungry. The vision shattered like glass, and suddenly we were just 5 terrified soldiers in a Humvee, racing across a desert that had become a waking nightmare. The figures, both the uniformed adults and the crying children, had vanished, but I could feel them still watching from somewhere beyond sight. "Command! This is Reaper 6. Hayes was shouting into his radio. "Emergency! Emergency! We need immediate extraction, we need—" He stopped, pulled the handset away from his ear, and stared at it in horror. "They're laughing. Command's channel is just laughter." He switched frequencies frantically, cycling through every available channel. Every single one carried the same sound, that children's laughter, innocent and gleeful and absolutely chilling. "Turn it off," I ordered. "All radios, all communications equipment. Turn it all off right now." We scrambled to comply, shutting down radios, GPS units, even our digital watches. Anything with electronics, anything that might serve as a conduit for whatever was reaching out from that facility. In the sudden silence, broken only by the Humvee's engine and our ragged breathing, I tried to think clearly. We were approximately 20 kilometers from Kuwait City, maybe 30 minutes at our current speed. Once we reached the staging area, we'd be surrounded by thousands of coalition troops, command staff, support personnel. We'd be safe. Except I knew that wasn't true. Nothing would be safe. Not anymore. Morrison, I said carefully. When you were down there, when the lights went out, you said you saw what that place really was. What did you see? He didn't answer immediately, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I saw time. All of it. Past, present, future, all happening at once. I saw the facility being built, 1,000,000 years ago, by things that looked like us but weren't us. Older. From somewhere else. They were running from something, hiding from it. They built that place as a refuge, sealing themselves inside, thinking they'd be safe. He laughed hollowly. But the thing they were hiding from followed them. It always follows. That's what it does. It follows and it waits, and when you're not watching, it gets inside. Inside what? Webb asked. Everything. Your head. Your machines. Your very perception of reality. It doesn't exist in 3 dimensions like we do. It exists in all dimensions, in the spaces between spaces. The facility isn't a building, it's a trap. Prison. Those beings built it to contain the thing that was hunting them. They sacrificed themselves, let it absorb them, and then sealed the whole complex underground, hoping it would stay dormant forever. But we opened it, I said. We opened it, Morrison confirmed. And now it's free. We're starting to be free. The door we used, that hatch, that was the first seal to break. There are others deeper down. If they all break... He trailed off, but he didn't need to finish. I could see the implications clearly enough. Torres leaned forward from the back seat. So what do we do? There's got to be a way to stop it, to seal it back up. You can't seal it up, Morrison said. You can't kill it or contain it or even understand it, not really. It exists on a level beyond human comprehension. The best we can do is slow it down. Delay the inevitable. How? I demanded. Fire. Nuclear fire. If command hits that site with everything they have, tactical nukes, bunker busters, the works, they might be able to collapse the entire complex, bury it under enough rubble and fuse sand to delay its emergence. Maybe for another 1,000 years. Maybe longer. He met my eyes in the rearview mirror. But that's assuming command believes us. Assuming they act fast enough. Assuming the thing doesn't spread before they can. The engine died. Just cut out, no warning, no sputtering or coughing. 1 second we were moving at 60 kilometers per hour, the next we were coasting to a stop, momentum the only thing keeping us going. Morrison tried the ignition. Nothing. No response, not even a click from the starter. Electronics are fried, Webb said, checking the dashboard. Everything's dead. Lights, ignition, all of it. We rolled to a complete stop in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by empty desert in every direction. The sun was finally moving normally, beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sand in shades of orange and red. Beautiful if you didn't know what was coming. Everyone out, I ordered. Weapons ready. Defensive perimeter. We deployed around the Humvee, putting the vehicle at our backs, scanning the horizon for threats. But the desert appeared empty. No figures, no apparitions, no darkness spreading across the sand. Just heat, shimmer, and stillness and the whisper of wind. Maybe it's just mechanical failure, Hay suggested hopefully. The Humvee's been through a lot. Could just be. Every compass we were carrying started spinning. Not pointing north, not pointing anywhere specific, but rotating continuously, the needles whirling so fast they became blurs. At the same time, the temperature dropped. Rapidly. Within seconds, our breath was misting in the air, frost forming on the Humvee's metal surfaces. And the sand beneath our feet began to move. The sand shifted and swirled in patterns that made my eyes hurt. Spirals and fractals and geometric shapes that folded into themselves in impossible ways. It didn't rise up to attack us, didn't form into threatening shapes. It just moved, constantly rearranging itself, like it was responding to some invisible force. Get in the vehicle, Morrison shouted. Now! The vehicle's dead, Webb protested. We're safer out. The sand exploded upward. Not violently, But suddenly, a geyser of granules shooting 20 feet into the air directly between our defensive positions. And in that moment of suspension, with billions of sand particles hanging motionless in the air like frozen water, I saw what Morrison had seen in the facility. The sand formed shapes, billions of individual grains moving in perfect coordination, creating images of the past and future simultaneously. I saw the facility being built, saw the ancient beings sealing themselves inside, saw the thing that hunted them settling down around the structure like a blanket, patient and eternal. I saw us opening that hatch, saw the moment when the first seal broke and the thing began to wake. Saw it reaching out through the dimensions, its attention focusing on us like a magnifying glass concentrating sunlight, burning and invasive. And I saw what was coming. Saw the darkness spreading from that site, consuming everything it touched, turning solid matter into something else, something that operated on rules that had nothing to do with human physics. Saw cities going dark one by one, as the thing spread across the globe. Saw people changing, their bodies remaining human-shaped but their insides replaced with something alien and vast. Saw the world ending not with fire or ice, but with transformation into something we couldn't comprehend or survive. Then the sand fell, and the visions vanished, leaving us gasping and shaking in the sudden darkness. The sun had set or been blocked out, while we were trapped in that moment, and stars now filled the sky above us. But they were wrong stars, wrong constellations. I'd been in this desert for months, knew the night sky by heart, and these weren't the stars that were supposed to be visible from Kuwait in March. "Where are we?" Torres whispered. "We're nowhere," Morrison answered. "We're everywhere. We're in the space between spaces. The thing has us." As if in response to his words, lights appeared on the horizon. Not the lights of Kuwait City, those would be yellowish, the glow of sodium vapor and incandescent bulbs. These were blue-white and perfectly steady, arranged in a grid pattern that stretched from one end of the visible desert to the other. And they were growing closer. "We need to move," I said. "Away from those lights. Stay together, weapons ready. If something comes at us, bullets won't stop it," Morrison interrupted. "Nothing will stop it. It's already decided what it wants to do with us. We're just waiting to find out what that is." "Shut up, Morrison," Torres snapped. "I don't care what you saw or think you saw, we're not giving up. We're soldiers. We fight." "Fight what? How do you fight something that exists in dimensions we can't even perceive? How do you shoot something that's inside your own head, rewriting your thoughts as fast as you can think them?" He was breaking down, his voice rising toward hysteria. I grabbed his shoulder, forcing him to meet my eyes. "Listen to me. Whatever that thing is, whatever it wants, it made a mistake. It let us see what it is. It showed us its capabilities. That means it's either arrogant or it wants us to know. Either way, that's useful information. That's something we can work with." "Work with how?" He laughed bitterly. "In case you hadn't noticed, Sergeant, we're completely cut off. No communication, no transportation, stuck in the middle of a desert that isn't even real anymore. What exactly are we going to do?" Before I could answer, Hayes gasped and pointed behind us. "The Humvee." We turned and I felt my blood run cold. The vehicle was changing. Its metal surfaces were flowing like liquid, the rigid geometric shapes of military engineering melting into something organic and curved. The tires had flattened and spread, becoming more like tentacles or roots, digging into the sand. And the interior, visible through windows that had become transparent and membranous, was filled with that same blue-white light we'd seen in the facility's corridors. "It's transforming the vehicle," Webb said, his voice remarkably calm. "Converting it into something else, something it can use." The transformation accelerated, metal and rubber and plastic all flowing together, losing their individual properties and becoming a single unified substance. Within 30 seconds, what had been our Humvee was now a structure maybe 15 feet tall, vaguely pyramidal, pulsing with internal light. And it was calling us. Not with sound, but with that same mental pressure we'd felt in the facility. Images flooded my mind. Promises of safety, warmth, understanding. All we had to do was approach the structure, place our hands on its surface, and we would be welcomed, accepted. transformed into something greater than human, freed from the limitations of flesh and fear. "Don't listen to it," I said, as much to myself as to my team. "Back away slowly. Get distance between us and—" Torres was walking toward the structure. "Torres, stop." I lunged forward, grabbed his arm, tried to pull him back. But he was stronger than he should have been, or I was weaker. Either way, I couldn't stop him. He shook me off with casual ease and continued toward the transformed Humvee. "Kevin, listen to me." Webb moved to intercept him, but Torres turned with that same too-wide smile we'd seen on the figures in the desert. "It's okay," Torres said, his voice oddly flat. "It's showing me things. Beautiful things. The future. The way things are supposed to be. Don't you want to see?" "He's already compromised," Morrison said hopelessly. "It's in his head. He's gone." Torres reached the structure and placed both palms against its surface. The moment he made contact, the light inside intensified, and Torres went rigid, his whole body convulsing. But he wasn't in pain. He was laughing, that same children's laughter we'd heard on the radio. The structure pulsed, and something flowed from it into Torres, or from Torres into it, I couldn't tell which. His body began to change, skin becoming translucent, revealing the network of blood vessels and organs beneath. Except they weren't human organs anymore. They were geometric shapes, crystals and circuits, organic and mechanical simultaneously. "We have to help him." Hayes raised his weapon, aiming at the structure. "No!" I knocked the barrel up just as he fired, the shot going wild into the air. "You'll kill him. He's already dead," Morrison screamed. "Look at him. That's not Torres anymore. That's not human." He was right. What stood with its hands on the structure, lit from within by that alien glow, wore Torres's face and uniform but was no longer Torres. It was something else, something new, wearing him like a costume. And it turned to look at us. "Come," it said with Torres's voice, Torres's mouth, but with dozens of other voices layered beneath, speaking in unison. "Come and see. Understand. Witness the beauty of transition. Embrace what comes next." The structure pulsed again, and the blue-white light spilled out onto the sand, spreading in tendrils that reached toward us like fingers. Where the light touched, the sand transformed, becoming that same crystalline material, solid and alien and wrong. "Run," I ordered. "Now. Don't look back." We ran into the darkness, the starlight barely enough to navigate by, our boots sinking into sand that shifted beneath us with disturbing intentionality. Behind us, I heard Torres, or what had been Torres, calling out in that choir of voices, telling us how wonderful it was, how transcendent, how we were missing the opportunity of existence itself. Hayes tripped and went down hard. Webb and I grabbed him, hauling him upright, but in that moment of pause, I looked back. The structure was growing, expanding, its surface area increasing geometrically. And around it, more structures were emerging from the sand. Smaller versions of the first, arranged in a circle, all pulsing with that same light. Between them, the transformed sand created pathways, a network of crystalline roads spreading out across the desert. "It's building," Morrison panted, running beside me. "Creating infrastructure. This is how it spreads. It transforms existing matter into extensions of itself, creates a network, expands exponentially. Within days, it'll cover the entire region. Within weeks, the whole planet. Then we need to reach command before that happens," I said. "Warn them. Convince them to act. They won't believe us. We don't even have proof anymore. Your helmet camera was in the Humvee." Damn it. He was right. In our panic to escape, we'd left behind the only evidence that could convince command of what we'd found. Without that footage, we were just 5 soldiers, no, for now, with a crazy story about monsters under the desert. The lights were spreading faster than we could run. Every minute, dozens more structures emerged from the sand, each one a node in a growing network. And between them, I saw figures moving. Not the apparitions from before, but solid forms. People. Or things that had been people before the transformation took them. Some wore Iraqi military uniforms. Others wore civilian clothes. A few wore the desert camouflage of coalition forces. All of them moved with that same mechanical precision, going about tasks I couldn't begin to understand, building something vast and terrible. How far to Kuwait City? Webb gasped. I tried to calculate, but between the darkness and our panicked flight, I'd lost track of distance and direction. The stars above were still wrong, offering no guidance. For all I knew, we could be running deeper into the desert, away from civilization instead of toward it. Hayes cried out and fell again, but this time when we reached for him, he waved us off. My ankle. Something's wrong with it. I knelt beside him, pulling out a flashlight I'd somehow remembered to grab from my belt. The light revealed his left boot, and I felt my gorge rise. His boot was melting. The leather and rubber were flowing like wax, merging with his pant leg, and beneath that I could see his ankle transforming, bone and flesh becoming something crystalline and segmented. "Oh God!" Hayes whimpered. "Oh God! It's in me. I can feel it in me, changing me." "How?" Webb demanded. "When did it?" "When I fell the first time. My hand touched that transformed sand. That's all it took. Just contact." Hayes looked up at us, tears streaming down his face. "You have to leave me. If I'm transforming, if I'm becoming one of those things, you can't let me compromise you too." "We're not leaving you," I said, but even as I spoke, I could see the transformation accelerating. The crystalline corruption was climbing up his leg, spreading in fractal patterns beneath his skin. He had minutes at most. "Sergeant, you don't have a choice." Hayes's voice was remarkably steady despite the tears. "Morrison's right, this thing spreads by contact. If I transform while I'm with you, I'll become a vector, a transmitter. You've seen what it does. I'll hunt you down without even meaning to." "There has to be a way to stop it," Webb insisted. "Amputation, cauterization, something?" "It's not in my leg, Webb. It's in my cells, my blood, probably my brain by now. You'd have to amputate me from myself." Hayes fumbled at his belt, pulled out his sidearm, and pressed it into my hand. "Please, don't let me become one of those things. Don't let me lose myself." I stared at the weapon, its weight suddenly unbearable. "Danny, I can't." "You can. You have to. That's an order, Sergeant." He laughed weakly at his own joke, a corporal giving orders to a staff sergeant. "Besides, you're the only one I trust to do it quick and clean. Morrison's too far gone himself." Webb would hesitate and... He looked down at his transforming leg. "I don't have much time." The light from the spreading network was bright enough now that I could see his face clearly. Still Hayes. Still the nervous kid from Boston who clicked his pen. But the skin around his eyes was starting to take on that translucent quality, revealing the changes beneath. "Tell my parents I didn't suffer," he said. Tell them I died serving my country. They don't need to know about any of this." I chambered around, my hands moving on autopilot while my mind screamed at me to find another way. But there was no other way. I'd seen what the transformation did, seen Torres become something that wore his face but wasn't him anymore. I couldn't let that happen to Hayes. "Thank you," Hayes whispered, "for everything, for being a good leader, for..." I pulled the trigger. The shot echoed across the desert, impossibly loud in the darkness. Hayes slumped sideways, the transformation stopping mid-progression, half his body still human, the other half something else. But he was gone. That quick, that clean, like he'd asked. Webb turned away, his shoulders shaking. Morrison just stared, his face expressionless. I couldn't look at either of them. Couldn't look at Hayes's body. Could only focus on the spreading lights, now less than a kilometer away and closing fast. "We need to move," I said mechanically. "Now." We ran again, leaving Hayes behind in the darkness. I told myself we'd come back for him, recover his body, give him a proper burial. But I knew that was a lie. None of us were making it out of this desert. We were just delaying the inevitable. The ground beneath our feet began to slope upward. A dune, maybe, or a ridge. As we climbed, I realized the air was changing, becoming warmer, more humid. The stars above were shifting, constellations rearranging themselves in real time. "We're moving between states," Morrison panted. Not physically traveling, but shifting through dimensional layers. The thing is pulling us deeper into its realm. How do we stop it? Webb demanded. We don't. We're caught in its gravity now. All we can do is... Morrison stopped abruptly at the crest of the rise. Oh no! I reached the top and saw what he was looking at. Kuwait City lay spread out before us, exactly where it should be. Thousands of lights, military bases, oil facilities, the airport. Civilization and safety so close I could almost taste it. But between us and the city, covering every inch of the intervening desert, was the network. Thousands of those structures, interconnected by rivers of blue-white light, pulsing in perfect synchronization. And among them, tens of thousands of transformed figures, going about their incomprehensible work. The thing hadn't just spread. It had metastasized. How long were we running? Webb asked hollowly. An hour? 2? How could it have grown this much? Time doesn't work the same way here, Morrison said. Haven't you figured that out yet? We could have been running for days while only minutes passed in the real world. Or the reverse. Or both simultaneously. He sat down heavily on the sand. It doesn't matter anymore. Look. He pointed toward Kuwait City, and I saw what he meant. The lights of the city were changing, blue-white spreading among the yellows and whites of normal illumination. The transformation had reached the city, was probably already inside it, converting people, machines, buildings into extensions of itself. How many people in Kuwait City right now? Webb asked. Thousands? Tens of thousands. More, I said numbly. Coalition forces, civilian contractors, aid workers, Kuwaiti civilians. Hundreds of thousands. All of them about to be transformed. All of them about to become part of this vast, spreading intelligence that operated on rules we couldn't comprehend. My radio crackled. I'd forgotten I'd turned it off, but it was active again, the handset glowing with that now familiar blue-white light. Command's voice came through, clear and calm. Reaper 6, this is Command. We've secured the site. Whatever you thought you encountered, it's contained now. Return to base for debrief and medical evaluation. It was Command's voice, Command's call sign and frequency. But underneath it, I could hear the others, the choir of voices speaking in unison, telling comfortable lies. It's in Command, Morrison said. It's in the radio network, the communication systems, using our own infrastructure against us. The radio continued, Reaper 6, acknowledge. We're dispatching vehicles to your location for pickup. Acknowledge, please. I threw the radio as hard as I could, watching it disappear into the darkness below. It wouldn't help. The thing was in the electromagnetic spectrum itself now, probably in every radio, every phone, every piece of electronic equipment in the region. But the gesture made me feel marginally better. Vehicles, Webb repeated hollowly. It said vehicles. That means it knows where we are. It's been tracking us this whole time. Of course it has, Morrison said. We were never escaping. We were being herded, driven to this exact spot so we could witness this. He gestured at the vast network below us. It wants us to see what it's accomplished, wants us to understand that resistance is futile, that transformation is inevitable. But why? I demanded. If it can just transform us like it did Torres and Hayes, why go to all this trouble? Why the chase, the fear, the theatrics? Morrison looked at me with eyes that held too much knowledge, too much understanding. Because it's not just transforming our bodies. It's transforming our consciousness, our very concept of reality. Fear and desperation make the mind pliable, break down resistance. By the time it takes you, you're ready. You welcome it. He smiled, and I realized with horror that his teeth had become translucent. I can feel it in me now. It got in through the eyes, I think. When we looked at that thing in the shaft. When we saw what it really was. That's when it planted the seed. Morrison. Webb reached for him, but Morrison stood and walked toward the edge of the ridge. It's beautiful, really. Once you stop fighting it, once you accept what's happening, you can see the pattern. The purpose. Everything in the universe is just information, different arrangements of the same basic components. This thing, it's not destroying us. It's upgrading us. optimizing us, making us part of something greater. That's not you talking, I said desperately. That's the thing in your head, using your voice. Is there a difference? Morrison laughed. We're all just biological machines running programs written by evolution and culture. The thing is just offering a better program. More efficient, more beautiful, more true. He turned to face us, and I saw that his eyes had changed completely. No longer organs but windows into something vast and incomprehensible, depths that went on forever in directions that shouldn't exist. Come with me, Morrison said. Let me show you. Let me help you understand. It doesn't have to be frightening. It can be, he paused, searching for words, ecstatic, transcendent. Everything you've ever wanted to know, everything you've ever wanted to be. It's all there. All you have to do is let go. Webb raised his weapon, hands shaking. Don't move, Morrison. Stay right there. Or what? You'll shoot me? Morrison spread his arms. Go ahead. But it won't stop what's happening. I'm just one node in a network that spans this entire region now. Shoot me, and you'll still hear my voice in your head. Still see what I see. Still know what I know. Sergeant. Webb looked to me for orders. But what could I tell him? Shoot our friend? Don't shoot? Run? Stand and fight? I had no answers. No training for this. No procedure to follow. The structures below us pulsed in unison, and suddenly the air was filled with sound. Not noise, but music. Crystalline tones that resonated in frequencies I could feel in my bones, my teeth, my skull. And in that music I heard patterns, mathematical sequences, the architecture of reality itself, laid bare. Morrison was right. It was beautiful. No, that wasn't me thinking that. That was the thing, getting into my head through the sound, through my eyes, through my very perception of the moment. I squeezed my eyes shut, covered my ears, but the music continued, transmitted through bone conduction, through the sand beneath my feet, through the air itself. Fight it! Webb was shouting, his words distant and distorted. Sergeant, don't listen. We have to. His voice cut off abruptly. When I opened my eyes, I saw him standing motionless, his rifle fallen to the ground, staring at Morrison with an expression of wonder. Oh, Webb said softly. Oh, I see it now. I see everything. No, not Webb too. I was alone now. The last one still fighting, still resisting. Morrison and Webb stood together, watching me with those transformed eyes, and I could see the pity in their expressions. Pity for the one human still clinging to limited perception, still bound by the chains of biology and fear. Michael, Morrison said, using my first name for the first time since boot camp. You're suffering. We can see it. Every moment you resist is agony, fighting against the inevitable. Why do you persist? Because I'm human, I wanted to say. Because surrendering my humanity, my individuality, myself is the same as dying. Because what you're offering isn't transcendence. It's extinction. But I couldn't speak. The music had become a pressure in my skull, building and building until I thought my head would burst. My vision was tunneling, darkening at the edges, and I could feel something probing at my thoughts, trying to find a way in. And part of me, a growing, insistent part, wanted to let it in, wanted to stop fighting, wanted the pain and fear to end, even if that meant ending myself in the process. I pulled out my sidearm, the same one I'd used on Hayes. One round left. I could use it on Morrison and Webb, try to stop them from whatever they were about to do. Or I could use it on myself, end this before the transformation took me. But if I did that, who would warn the world? Who would tell the story of what we'd found, what we'd unleashed? The answer came to me with perfect clarity. No one. Because there was no warning that would matter, no story that would change what was coming. The transformation was already happening, spreading through Kuwait City and beyond at exponential rates. By morning, or what passed for morning in this twisted reality, the entire region would be part of the network. By next week, the planet, unless command acted, unless someone with the authority and resources to deploy strategic weapons believed what was happening here and acted decisively. But how could I convince them when I was trapped in this dimensional pocket, when all communications were compromised, when my own team had been transformed. "You can't," Morrison said, responding to thoughts I hadn't spoken aloud. "That's what you're realizing, isn't it? The futility of resistance. The inevitability of what comes next. You're the last human in this space, Michael. The last island of old consciousness in an ocean of the new. How long do you think you can hold out?" "As long as it takes," I managed to say, my voice hoarse from screaming or crying or both. "Takes for what? There's no rescue coming. No cavalry arriving at the last moment. You're alone. Alone." The word echoed in my mind, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the full weight of isolation. My team was gone. Torres transformed, Hayes dead, Morrison and Webb lost to whatever this thing was. Command was compromised. The city was falling, and I was standing on a ridge in a desert that existed in too many dimensions simultaneously, with one bullet and no plan. The structures below pulsed again, and new shapes began emerging from the network. Larger than the others, towering hundreds of feet into the alien sky. These weren't built. They grew, rising from the sand like organic things, crystalline and geometric but somehow alive. "Relay stations," Morrison explained, his voice taking on a professorial tone. "Once the network reaches a critical mass, it can extend its influence beyond the physical substrate. Broadcast its transformative pattern through electromagnetic radiation, through quantum entanglement, through dimensions of spacetime we haven't even discovered yet. Those towers will seed the entire planet. Within a month, every living thing will be connected, transformed, optimized." "Optimized for what?" I demanded. Morrison smiled. "Understanding. Pure, perfect understanding. No more war. No more conflict. No more misunderstanding or isolation or loneliness. Everyone and everything connected in one vast consciousness, experiencing reality from infinite perspectives simultaneously. Can't you see how beautiful that is? How necessary? It's death," I said. "Death of individuality, death of choice, death of everything that makes us human. Humanity is just a transitional stage," Webb spoke up, his transformed eyes reflecting the light from below. "A chrysalis that the species has to shed to reach its true potential. We're not dying, Michael. We're being born." The music reached a crescendo, and I fell to my knees, unable to stand against the pressure anymore. The weapon fell from my hand, useless now. What was the point? I couldn't fight this. Couldn't stop it. Could only watch as everything I knew and understood was transformed into something alien and unknowable. And then, in the depths of my despair, I heard a new sound. Aircraft. Faint at first, barely audible over the crystalline music, but growing louder. The rhythmic thump of rotor blades, multiple aircraft, approaching fast from the direction of Kuwait City. Morrison and Webb looked up, their expressions shifting from pity to something else. Concern, maybe, or calculation. "They're coming for us," Webb said. "The military. They've figured out something's wrong." "It doesn't matter," Morrison replied. "Whatever they bring, whatever weapons they deploy, the network is too distributed now. Too advanced. Their instruments will be compromised before they can even assess the situation properly." But there was uncertainty in his voice. The helicopters were getting closer, and with them came something else. A sensation I could only describe as pressure releasing, like a bubble popping. The dimensional overlay that had trapped us here was weakening. "What's happening?" I gasped. Morrison closed his transformed eyes, communing with the network. When he opened them again, I saw something I hadn't expected. Fear. "They're bombing the site, the original facility. They've deployed bunker busters and incendiary weapons. The substrate is being destroyed faster than the network can adapt. The relay towers are compensating, trying to maintain the dimensional bridge. But a shockwave rolled across the desert, visible as a ripple in reality itself. The structures below flickered, their light dimming for a moment before stabilizing. But some of them didn't recover. They collapsed, dissolving into component matter, the transformed materials reverting to sand. "It's working," Webb breathed. "Whatever they're hitting it with, it's damaging the network." The helicopters appeared over the ridge, 3 Apache gunships in tight formation, their weapons pods loaded. But they weren't heading toward us. They were flying toward the network below, and as they passed overhead, I saw missiles launching, chains guns firing, everything they had being deployed against the structures. Explosions bloomed across the transformed desert, destroying relay towers and network nodes. Each detonation created another ripple in reality, weakening the dimensional overlay. The music faltered, became discordant. Morrison cried out, clutching his head. Webb fell to his knees. The network was in pain, or what passed for pain in its vast, distributed consciousness. "This is Command Actual." A voice boomed from the helicopter's external speakers. "All personnel in the target zone. If you can hear this, mark your position with smoke or signal. We're executing a sterilization protocol on the infected area. If you're still human, if you're still you, get to high ground and mark yourselves now." I scrambled for my emergency flare, hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The instructions seemed impossibly complicated. Remove cap, strike igniter, hold away from body. But I managed somehow. Red smoke burst upward, a brilliant crimson column against the alien sky. The helicopters banked toward me immediately. One broke formation, heading for my position, while the other 2 continued their assault on the network below. More explosions lit up the desert, each one creating cascading failures in the crystalline structures. "No," Morrison moaned. "No, you don't understand. You're destroying something beautiful, something necessary. You're choosing ignorance over enlightenment, limitation over transcendence." "I'm choosing to stay human," I said. Webb looked at me, and for just a moment, I saw something of my friend in those alien eyes. A flicker of the man he'd been before the transformation took him. "I'm sorry," Webb whispered. "I'm sorry, Sergeant. I tried to fight it. I tried." His body convulsed, the network attempting to reassert control. But the dimensional overlay was collapsing, reality snapping back toward its proper configuration, and the connection was weakening. The transformation that had taken Webb and Morrison was reversing. Not completely, but enough that I could see them fighting it, clawing back toward humanity. The helicopter reached my position, hovering 20 feet above the ridge. A crew member appeared in the open door, wearing full MOPP gear, chemical protection suit, gas mask, gloves. He tossed down a rope. "Climb!" he shouted. "Now! This whole area's about to be sanitized." I grabbed the rope, then hesitated. Morrison and Webb were collapsing, the network losing its hold on them as the dimensional bridge failed. If I left them here, they'd be caught in whatever sanitization command was about to deploy. But if I stayed to help them, we'd all die. "There's 2 more," I shouted up at the crew member. "My team. They're transformed, but they're fighting it. They're still. No time. Orders are to recover surviving personnel only. Climb or we're leaving you. Surviving personnel. Not transformed personnel." The words were a death sentence for Morrison and Webb. "I can't leave them," I screamed. "They're still in there. They're still." Morrison looked up at me, blood running from his nose and ears as his body tried to process the competing signals from the collapsing network and his own biology. "Go," he croaked. "Tell them what happened. Tell them what we found." "Sergeant, that's an order." Webb nodded, unable to speak. His hands clutched to his chest as his heart struggled to beat with human rhythm instead of the network's synchronized pulse. The helicopter pilot's voice crackled over the loudspeaker. 30 seconds. Either you're on that rope or we're gone." I climbed. Hated myself for it, but I climbed. Hand over hand up the rope while Morrison and Webb watched from below, their transformed eyes dimming as the network released them. Were they dying? Reverting to human? I couldn't tell, and there was no time to find out. Strong hands grabbed me, hauling me into the helicopter. The door gunner was shouting something, but I couldn't hear over the rotor noise and the sound of my own heart hammering in my ears. The helicopter banked hard, climbing fast and accelerating away from the ridge. "Wait!" I grabbed the crew member's arm. "My team, we can still." "Look," he said grimly, pointing out the door. The entire network below was collapsing. The relay towers were falling, the crystalline pathways cracking and dissolving. And from the west I saw them coming, multiple aircraft, flying high and fast. B-52s, if I had to guess, loaded with something terrible. What are they carrying? I asked, already knowing the answer. Need to know, Sergeant. But if I were you, I'd close my eyes for the next 60 seconds. I didn't close my eyes. I watched as the bombers reached the target zone and released their payload. Dozens of weapons fell like metal rain, and when they hit, the desert turned to glass. Thermobaric weapons. Fuel-air explosives designed to incinerate everything within their blast radius. Temperature high enough to melt sand, consume organic matter, and sterilize an entire area. Overkill for a normal bunker complex, but against a dimensional intrusion that fed on matter itself? Maybe just enough. The explosions merged into a single fireball that lit up the night like a second sun. The shockwave rocked our helicopter even miles away. And in that terrible light, I saw the network die, saw the crystalline structures dissolve, saw the transformed figures stumble and fall, saw the dimensional overlay shatter like broken glass, saw Morrison and Webb, two tiny figures on a ridge, consumed by fire that burned hotter than the surface of the sun. All units, this is command actual. Target neutralized. Repeat, target is neutralized. All aircraft return to base. Sterilization complete. The pilot turned the helicopter toward Kuwait City, and I slumped against the bulkhead, shaking uncontrollably. The crew member, a corpsman I realized now, was trying to check me for injuries, but I pushed him away. How did you know? I asked. How did command figure out what was happening? Your team's emergency beacon, he replied, started transmitting weird data about 6 hours ago. Command couldn't decipher it, but the pattern was clearly distress. They sent drones first, saw something seriously fucked up happening in that sector. Made the call to hit it hard before it spread. 6 hours. We'd been in that dimensional pocket for 6 hours while only minutes passed in the real world. Or maybe it was the reverse. Time had lost all meaning in that place between places. Did it work? I asked. Is it really dead? The corpsman didn't answer immediately. Finally, command thinks so, but they're quarantining the entire area for the next month. Nothing goes in or out. And you? He looked at me with obvious concern. You're going to be in isolation for a while. Medical evaluation, psychological screening, the works. Anyone who had contact with that site is considered potentially compromised. They kept me in isolation for 37 days. A clean room in a classified facility somewhere in Germany. They never told me exactly where, and I never saw a window. Just white walls, medical equipment, and an endless rotation of doctors, psychiatrists, and intelligence officers, all asking the same questions in different ways. What did you see? What did it do? How did it communicate? Are you still you? That last question was the hardest to answer, because honestly, I didn't know. I'd been touched by something beyond human comprehension, had felt it probing at my thoughts, trying to rewrite my consciousness. How could I be sure it hadn't left something behind? A seed, like Morrison said. Program waiting to execute. The helmet camera footage was recovered, they told me. Damaged, corrupted in places, but enough survived to corroborate my story. They showed me edited clips, carefully selected moments that avoided the worst of what we'd seen. Even in those sanitized segments, I had to look away. The memories were too fresh, too raw. Torres's body was never found. Neither were Hayes, Morrison, or Webb. The thermobaric strike had vaporized everything within a 2-mile radius, leaving only fused glass and silence. I asked for a memorial service, for some acknowledgement of their sacrifice. Was told their names were classified, their service records sealed, their families given cover stories about training accidents. They died for nothing, in other words, their sacrifice unrecorded, their names stricken from history. The doctors assured me I was clean, no biological changes, no neurological abnormalities, no sign of transformation. But they couldn't see what I saw when I closed my eyes. The crystalline structures, the transformed faces, that voice in my head, whispering, "Stay." On day 38, a colonel I'd never met entered my room carrying a folder stamped with classifications, so high I wasn't supposed to know they existed. "Sergeant Cordell," he said, taking a seat across from my bed. You're being discharged. Honorable, full benefits, medical for life. Your service record will show you completed your deployment without incident. Kuwait, Iraq, all of it classified under national security protocols. I understand, sir. Do you? He opened the folder, showing me documents I couldn't begin to parse. Because you need to understand that what happened in that desert never happened. The facility never existed. Your team never entered it. The entity or phenomenon or whatever the hell it was never was. As far as history is concerned, you spent Desert Storm doing routine supply runs and returned home without ever seeing combat. And the truth, sir? The truth is buried under 3 miles of glass in the Kuwaiti desert, and that's where it's going to stay. He closed the folder. The quarantine zone is permanent. No one enters it, no one studies it, no one even acknowledges it exists. The official story is unexploded ordnance from the war. Danger signs in Arabic and English. Armed patrols to keep civilians out. It'll stay that way for the next 1,000 years if necessary. What if it's not dead? I asked. What if the bombardment only delayed it, like Morrison said? Sealed it back up for another few centuries, but didn't destroy it? The colonel's expression didn't change. Then that's a problem for people centuries from now. Our job is to make sure it stays contained long enough for this generation to die off and forget it ever happened. Which brings me to you, Sergeant. He produced another document, a non-disclosure agreement so comprehensive it made my head spin just looking at it. Penalties for violation included life imprisonment and other measures deemed necessary to protect national security. Sign it, he said. Go home. See your family. Get therapy for the PTSD we're telling people you have from your deployment. Live your life. Just don't ever talk about what happened in that desert. Not to your friends, your family, not to journalists or conspiracy theorists or drunk strangers in bars. You take this secret to your grave, Sergeant. Understood. I signed. What else could I do? They flew me back to the States the next day. Put me up in a military hotel, processed my discharge paperwork, gave me a final medical examination, and sent me on my way. Just like that, I was a civilian again. No ceremony, no recognition, no closure. I tried to live normally. Got a job as a security consultant. Got married, had 2 kids. Bought a house in the suburbs, mowed my lawn on Sundays, coached Little League. Pushed the memories down deep where they couldn't hurt me. But the nightmares never stopped. 3 decades later, I still wake up screaming, seeing crystalline structures and transformed faces. Still hear that voice whispering, "Stay." Still wonder if I brought something back with me. Some seed of transformation buried so deep in my psyche that even I can't detect it. And I watch the news. Watch for reports of unusual phenomena in Kuwait. Unexplained seismic activity. Strange lights in the desert. People going missing. Anything that might suggest the thing below is stirring again. So far, nothing. The quarantine zone remains undisturbed. Whatever we awakened that day seems to be sleeping again, sealed beneath miles of fused glass and sand. But Morrison was right about one thing. You can't kill something that exists in dimensions beyond our perception. You can only contain it, delay it, hope it stays dormant long enough that you're not alive when it wakes up again. I'm dying now. The doctors say it's cancer, but I know better. I felt it growing in me for years, not a tumor, but something else. Something that's been waiting, patient and eternal, for the right moment to bloom. On my worst nights, I wonder if I was transformed after all. If the thing let me leave that desert not as a survivor, but as a sleeper agent. A time bomb waiting to detonate. And when I die, when my consciousness finally lets go of this meat prison we call a body, will I transcend? Will I wake up in that crystalline network, finally understanding what Morrison and Webb understood in their final moments? Or will there just be nothing? The same nothing that waits for everyone, transformation or no transformation. I'm recording this now because I don't have long, because someone needs to know the truth, even if no one believes it. In 1991, in the Kuwaiti desert, U.S. soldiers found something alive beneath the sand. Something ancient and vast and incomprehensible. We opened the door that had kept it contained for millennia. Command thinks they sealed it back up. thinks the problem is solved. But I was there. I felt its attention, its hunger, its patience. And I know the truth is still down there, still waiting, still growing. And someday, maybe in a year, maybe in a century, maybe in a millennium, someone else will find that door, will open it, curious about what lies beneath. And when they do, there won't be any airstrikes or thermobaric bombs to save them. Because it's learned now. It knows our weapons, our strategies, our weaknesses. Next time, it won't reveal itself so quickly. It'll be patient, subtle. It'll spread through our communications networks, our computers, our very perception of reality before we even know it's there. And by the time anyone realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. The transformation will be complete. We'll all be part of the network. All of us, seeing through infinite eyes, thinking infinite thoughts, no longer bound by the limitations of individual consciousness. Some might call that transcendence. Morrison certainly did. I call it the end of everything that makes us human. But maybe that's okay. Maybe humanity is just a transitional stage, like Webb said, a chrysalis that has to split open to reveal what's underneath. I guess I'll find out soon enough. My name was Staff Sergeant Michael Cordell, and this is what happened in the Kuwaiti desert in March of 1991. Believe it or don't, it won't matter either way. When the door opens again, and it will open, belief won't save you. Nothing will.